A man was collapsing in the crowd. What this guard did wasn't in the manual. Welcome to the channel, where every silent moment hides a powerful story. If you're watching this right now, take a second to tell us where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing this community grow across borders. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss tomorrow's story, a powerful moment you won't want to forget. Now settle in. Today's story isn't loud. It doesn't need to be, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths. It was a bright afternoon outside Buckingham Palace. Tourists filled the forecourt, cameras in hand, some respectful, some just there for the novelty. Among them stood Private Ethan Collins, just 24 years old, holding his ground in full ceremonial uniform, his red tunic pressed, his bearskin hat rising nearly 2 feet high, and his SA-80 rifle clutched tightly in his right hand. He had stood there for over 40 minutes already, unmoving, eyes fixed straight ahead. His feet were locked shoulder-width apart, his posture like stone. He had trained for this, not just the ceremony, but the discipline it required. He knew that people would test him. He had been told that some would push, laugh, wave hands in his face, or shout, and he had promised himself he wouldn't react, not unless absolutely necessary. Then it happened. From the left side of the crowd came a group of 5 young men, loud and laughing. One of them, wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap, pointed directly at Ethan and said loudly, "Watch this. I bet I can make him blink." The others laughed. One pulled out a phone and hit record. They approached slowly, weaving through the crowd until they were standing just a few feet from Ethan's face. The lead one, smirking, waved his hand up and down in front of Ethan's eyes. Ethan didn't move. Then came the noises. Claps, tongue clicks, exaggerated coughs, all aimed at breaking his focus. Another man leaned in, mock saluting with a crooked smile. "Oi, mate," he said. "You even real under there?" Still nothing, no blink, no flinch, no sign of discomfort. Then, Ethan did something unexpected. He shifted his weight, just slightly. Not a reaction, but a controlled, deliberate movement. His boot struck the stone beneath him with a sharp, intentional crack. It echoed across the courtyard. The sound, subtle but surgical, cut through the laughter like a blade. The crowd hushed. The phone filming dropped slightly. Even the group of men, so full of confidence seconds earlier, looked at each other, suddenly unsure. And then, Ethan did what only trained guards know to do. He turned his head. Only by 5 degrees, only for a moment. But it was enough. His eyes met theirs. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't speak a single word, but the message was louder than anything he could have said. The group backed away, slowly, awkwardly, like children caught in a room they didn't belong in. The crowd remained silent, watching the men retreat. And then, as if on cue, the background noise returned. Murmurs, camera clicks, and the subtle footsteps of other guards beginning their march. Ethan remained still, back in position, head forward, posture locked. What those 5 men didn't realize, what many don't, is that a Queen's Guard isn't just a ceremonial figure. Many of them, including Ethan, have served in combat zones. Ethan completed 2 tours in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. He's seen more in silence than most could handle in words. He doesn't flinch because he's been trained not to. He doesn't speak because his silence is stronger than their shouting. And in that moment, he didn't defend his pride. He defended the dignity of something far greater, duty. So next time someone asks, why don't they respond? Remember this. Sometimes the most powerful statement is made without a single sound. The very next day, the skies over London shifted. Gray rolled in from the horizon, and within an hour, the air was heavy with rain. It wasn't a thunderstorm, just a cold, soaking downpour that blanketed the forecourt of Buckingham Palace. Tourists huddled under umbrellas. Some left early. Others stayed, eager to capture something rare, the sight of the Queen's Guard. Enduring not just the weight of their uniform, but the punishing elements. Among the guards that day was Private Ethan Collins, the same man who just 24 hours earlier had faced a group of hecklers with nothing but silence and one deliberate movement. Now, he stood at post again, this time in the rain. Rainwater trickled down his bearskin hat, pooling at the edge of his collar. His red tunic, starched and pressed just hours before, was now darkened with moisture. His gloves, soaked, his boots, heavy with water. But Ethan didn't shift, didn't adjust, didn't blink. He remained frozen. What most didn't know was this. Ethan's shift was supposed to end after the standard 2-hour rotation. Another guard was scheduled to relieve him, but when the time came, he stayed. No protest, no motion, no explanation. By the end of his 3rd hour, the back of his legs were visibly trembling. Not from weakness, but from cold. His body was soaking. The temperature had dropped to 49 degrees, and his rifle, once warm in his hands, now felt like steel dipped in ice. Still, he didn't budge. People whispered. Some took photos. Others watched in quiet awe. But nobody asked why. The answer came the next day in a letter. Not from Ethan, but from his commanding officer. The note posted on the regiment's official page was short, respectful, and when people read it, they understood. Private Ethan Collins stood an extended post on the 10th of October. He volunteered to remain in place through worsening weather, in memory of Corporal Aaron Collins, his older brother, who was killed in action in Afghanistan on that same date, 3 years earlier. That's right. October 10th was the day his brother died. Aaron had been a part of the Royal Marines. He was 27, shot during a patrol near Sangin. His body was flown home under the Union Jack. Ethan had watched the coffin come off the plane, had stood at attention as his brother was buried with full military honors. At just 19 years old, Ethan had made himself a promise. If I ever wear the uniform, I'll do it like Aaron would have wanted. Silent, strong, and unshaken. So he stood. Not for attention. Not for drama. Not for applause. He stood because that was how Aaron lived. Solid, dependable, and always in position, even when no one was looking. That day in the rain, Ethan didn't break formation because he wasn't just holding his own post. He was holding his brother's, too. And when he finally did step off duty, soaked to the bone, exhausted, shaking from the cold, he didn't say a word. He just nodded once to his replacement, wiped down his rifle, and walked back into the guardroom, head held high. See, anyone can hold a stance when it's easy, but standing still when your body aches, when your heart is heavy, and when no one's watching, that's where true discipline lives. That's where legacy is honored. And that's why he stood in the rain. 3 days after the rain, the skies over Buckingham Palace had cleared. The air was dry, crisp, perfect for photos, and the courtyard was packed again. The world hadn't stopped turning, but for Private Ethan Collins, something inside him had shifted. After standing through hours of cold in memory of his fallen brother Aaron, Ethan felt steadier, firmer, as if the silence had settled deeper into his bones. His presence hadn't gone unnoticed. A photo of him standing in the rain had gone viral. Headlines called him the stone in the storm. Veterans commented, civilians wept. But Ethan didn't read the posts. He was back on duty, focused, still, and silent, until the American guy showed up. Late afternoon, Ethan's second shift of the day. Tourists formed a half circle around him as he stood at post, motionless. That's when the voice cut through. The crowd. Yo, is he even real? He looks like a toy soldier. Laughter broke out. A man in his 30s, ball cap, sunglasses, chewing gum, stepped forward, holding a phone out like a weapon. His voice was loud, nasal, meant to entertain his friends or his followers. Probably both. Hey, buddy, bet I can make you flinch. He made a clicking noise with his tongue, then a fake sneeze. He crouched down and snapped a selfie with Ethan. In the background, doing a goofy face. Come on, man, smile. Don't be a statue. Ethan didn't move. The guy got bolder, circling slowly, standing inches from Ethan's face. At one point, he even mimicked holding a rifle and said, Look, I'm a Royal Guard too. More laughter, more phones. But Ethan still didn't react. Then the guy crossed a line. He leaned in, looked Ethan straight in the eye, and muttered, "You think standing still makes you important? You're just playing dress up." The words weren't loud, but Ethan heard them, and so did a few others in the front row. The crowd went quiet. Ethan didn't say a word. He didn't move an inch, but he did something that changed everything. He shifted his rifle, just a half-inch closer to his chest. Not aggressive, not threatening, but exact, controlled, deliberate. And with that one motion, the entire mood shifted. The laughter died. The man's smirk faded. And suddenly, he looked small. "He's not here to entertain you," someone whispered. The man stepped back, slowly. Without another word, he turned and walked off, vanishing into the crowd. The moment didn't end there. An elderly woman, British, coat buttoned to the neck, stepped forward, in her hand a folded poppy. She placed it gently near Ethan's boots and whispered, "For your silence, and what it stands for." That night, the video hit social media. Not of the man mocking, but of the moment. The crowd went still. People wrote, "That guard didn't need to speak. His silence said everything. He stood for every soldier who never answered back." And again, Ethan didn't read the comments. But when he removed his bearskin hat that evening and placed it on the rack, he did pause, just long enough to whisper to himself, "This uniform isn't worn for applause. It's worn for honor." Sometimes the loudest people try to break what they don't understand, but the strongest people never need to break back, because strength isn't noise. It's knowing exactly when to stay still. It had been a long week after the rain, the heckling, the photo that circled the internet. Private Ethan Collins had become a quiet symbol of something few could define. But everyone seemed to feel. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He didn't acknowledge the headlines or the praise. He just kept showing up, guarding the palace with the same steel posture and stillness that had now become his signature. But sometimes, it's not the noise that tests a soldier. It's the innocence. It was a Saturday. The sun was out again. Families filled the courtyard. A row of school children stood along the fence, all wearing matching yellow caps. Some held little flags. Some waved. Most stayed behind the marked boundary, but not all. A boy, maybe 4 years old, slipped past his group. While his teacher looked away for just a second, the boy took a step forward, then another, then one more. He was barely 3 feet tall, wearing a red sweater, light-up sneakers, and holding a juice pouch in one hand. And without realizing it, he crossed into the path of the marching guard. Ethan was standing at post, eyes forward, grip firm. He had just completed a slow turn and was about to begin his routine march. He hadn't seen the boy yet, not until his boot moved forward, and he caught the faintest glimpse of red in the corner of his eye. That was all it took. One step, one decision. Ethan paused mid-motion and for the briefest second, broke formation. He stepped back, precisely one pace, just enough to allow the child to keep walking. No panic, no shouting, no arms flailing. Just one step. So small it looked like part of the drill. The child kept walking, happily, clueless, right up to the guard line. He stopped in front of Ethan, looked up and said softly, "Are you Iron Man?" The crowd chuckled gently. Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't, but his eyes softened just for a second. And when the teacher rushed forward to pull the child back, flustered and apologetic, Ethan did something no one expected. He shifted his rifle slightly to the left, freeing his right hand, not to wave, but to allow the child to pass safely. The teacher mouthed, "Thank you." Ethan gave a micro nod, almost imperceptible, but it was there, and that was it. The crowd once again had fallen into quiet awe, not because of a dramatic moment, but because of the self-control it takes to be gentle when trained to be steel. Later that evening, someone posted a video clip, zoomed in, shaky but clear. The caption read, "He didn't scare the child. He protected him without ever breaking character." Thousands shared it, Military parents commented. Veterans saluted from afar. And somewhere in the mix, a father from Ohio wrote, "That could have been my son. Whoever that guard is, he just earned my lifelong respect." Ethan didn't see the comment. He was busy polishing his boots for the next shift, but when asked later about the moment, he simply said, "I didn't move for the child. I moved because duty sometimes means stepping back, so someone else can keep going forward." That's the thing about real strength. It isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just stands there, steady, quiet, and ready to make room when it matters most. Because in a world full of noise, the ones who move with purpose are the ones who never have to speak. Some days test your body, others test your nerves, but then there are days that test your instincts. It was early November, and the air outside Buckingham Palace had grown colder. Leaves crunched beneath, tourists' boots, scarves wrapped tighter. You could see your breath after noon. Private Ethan Collins, now a familiar face among the Queen's guards, had just begun his afternoon post. To most of the crowd, he was another uniform, another photo, opportunity, another statue in red and black. But to those who had been following his story, from the rain-soaked vigil to the child in the red sweater, he had become something more. A symbol of calm under pressure, a figure of silent resilience, and that day the silence was broken not by a scream or a laugh or a disrespectful shout, but by a cough. At first it sounded like nothing, a short, sharp cough from somewhere in the crowd. Ethan didn't flinch, but then it came again, louder, and again, more strained. From his peripheral vision, Ethan noticed a man, mid-60s, maybe older, staggering forward from the crowd. He was clutching his chest, eyes wide with panic. His gray coat hung loose, and his feet shuffled awkwardly on the pavement. No one else seemed to notice. People were busy adjusting cameras, chasing toddlers, or looking for better angles. Ethan's training kicked in. He couldn't move from post. He couldn't yell, but he could signal. With his left boot, he tapped the heel of his right, twice. Fast. A silent alert. A signal known only within the guard. To the average onlooker, it meant nothing. But within 15 seconds, two plainclothes officers emerged from the opposite side of the courtyard. One of them approached the man in distress while the other began directing tourists away, clearing space without causing panic. Ethan remained motionless, eyes ahead, heart pounding. The man collapsed to his knees, right there on the cold stone. One of the officers pulled out a radio. A medic was already en route. From Ethan's perspective, all he could see was the blur of movement and the deep, rasping breaths of a man who was struggling just to stay upright. The medic arrived in under 2 minutes. The man was stabilized. Turns out he was a Vietnam veteran visiting London for the first time in 40 years. His heart condition had flared up from the cold and the crowd. He had told the medic, "I just wanted to see the guard. I served too, way back." The story could have ended there. But it didn't. Because before the man was lifted into the ambulance, before the tourists resumed their wandering, he looked back, eyes locking on Ethan, and raised a trembling hand to his temple. In a slow salute, Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. But when his shift ended hours later and he removed his rifle from his shoulder, someone handed him a folded note. It was from the veteran. "I knew you saw me. I could feel it, even as I faded. You didn't move, but somehow you still had my back. That's the power of presence. It doesn't take words. It doesn't take motion. Sometimes just being there, still aware, committed, is all it takes to save a life. Because when everything else gets loud, real strength remains quiet and pays attention." Now that you've heard this story, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's silence made a bigger impact than words ever could? Maybe it was a soldier, a teacher, a parent, or even a stranger in the crowd. Moments like these often go unnoticed, but when they do surface, they stay with us. Drop a comment below and let us know. Where in the world are you watching from, and what does silent strength mean to you? We read every story you share, and your voice helps build a global community around something rare. Respect, discipline and human connection without noise. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, because tomorrow, we return with another powerful story that proves the quietest people often carry the loudest truths. This isn't just a video, it's a tribute to every moment that didn't make the headlines, but changed someone's life anyway.